Hello, everybody. Welcome to the interview with Yomic, the creator of Wholesome Monster Girl Academia. We are going to be asking him some questions today about his current work, a little bit about him personally, as well as his past previous works, because you've had two other games that have made it publicly if before Wholesome Monster Girl Academia, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, two on Steam and a couple of side projects here and there.
Okay,
Some of them on itch.io and some of them just, you make stuff and you don't upload it.
right, because I do actually have a question about one of the ones that I know you at least played with a little bit, the Digimon inspired one, because I was curious about how that works in the field, but I realized I forgot to bring that up previously. But we can get to that later. So for right now, as I said, we're discussing your current game. I wanted to say before we do fully begin, thank you today for taking the time to do this interview with me. Go ahead, sorry.
Absolutely. No problem.
As you know, I'm quite excited for your game, but in addition to myself, it's been gathering a lot of interest, both from secular society as well as Catholic, even people just that want a genuinely wholesome game. So, start with, how are you today? How is your family? How was Mass for you this weekend?
Everything's been excellent. Yeah,
Excellent.
no problems here. Just dealing with the school year, extra homework for the kid. Wife's doing well with her job. I'm doing good with mine, trying to get in time to write more of the game when I can, rewrite some summaries when certain things don't make sense, and just kind of get along.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. That's sounds like everything's progressing well. So let's see. As to begin with, I figured we'd start with a hard question. What are your favorite pizza toppings?
Ooh, that one's tough. Usually I just stick with pepperoni. I'm a simple guy, but if I go to a fancier place, one of those kind of choose your own toppings, little hole in the wall places, sometimes I'll also request like spinach, cauliflower, some red pepper flakes, just little bits and pieces that'll kind of spice it up for you.
Interesting. I was gonna say, I know I've heard of cauliflower crust, but I don't know if I've heard of cauliflower that much on the pizza itself. So I'd be curious how that tastes.
It's actually you'd be surprised what all you can get away with on a pizza, and it still tastes good.
That's true. As I say, I know a lot of people don't like pineapple, but I am a big advocate of pineapple on pizza, so I understand.
Sure.
So, what are some of your favorite games, and what games have had the biggest impact on you?
So, as far as favorite games go, that's kind of funny because people ask me that a lot. So I kind of, in a very serious sort of way, took that so seriously. I started a spreadsheet to kind of keep track of what are actually my favorite games since I've played so many. So it turns out if I sort them in the rating order that I have from like 9.5 to 1 or whatever, Mega Man X 1 through 3 are some of my favorites. Some of the earlier World of Warcraft expansion packs, La Mulana, which might be a little more obscure, but a really fun platformer game with lots of puzzles. Classics like Terraria, RimWorld, and a handful of visual novels. A couple RPGs too.
Interesting. That makes sense. I was gonna say, yeah, La Milana, I know that you've discussed with me a little bit before, and it's definitely something that's somewhat obscure, and it's definitely an interesting game. I was gonna say, I'll have to consider that because I only have my top 60 games. I don't even start considering the lower games on that list as well, so that's definitely something for me to keep track of. But yeah, I was gonna say that definitely sounds like a interesting list. I was gonna say, I know I personally do like Mega Man X3 as well, but I know that's of the first three, typically the black sheep of the bunch.
Usually I hear the third is the black sheep, and I guess people usually favorite the first and then maybe one of the PlayStation games, but number two is the sweet spot for me because
Yeah.
without X, it wouldn't have built the story up. But but X2 itself, just because of the multiple ending thing, that was new to me back then, and that was
Yeah.
really cool.
That is very cool. I like the Mega Man series as well. I have my Mega Man hat over there, but I don't want to get off camera for that. So,
Fair enough.
so let's see. As I say, after which games or pieces of media have had the most influence on your work, from Wholesome Monster Girl Academia, Alpha Man, When It Hits the Fan, or any work that you've done previously?
All of them have had at least a little bit of influence on my work, but I feel that if I'm making a platformer, all of the platformers have heavier influence. If I'm making a visual novel, the visual novels take precedence. And this all excludes things like short stories and game design advice that I have from other people and just lived experience. Um, so it just really depends on what game I'm making at the time, is what kind of influence I draw from. Like clearly, Alpha Man was Mega Man inspired in Wholesome Monster Girl Academia. I would say pretty much any slice of life visual novel.
That's fair. That makes sense. And while we were discussing your games, I did actually have this question I thought of earlier today. I should have sent it to you. I apologize. If after hopefully, obviously, Wholesome Monster Girl Academia is successful, recently I've been playing Sea of Stars on the Messenger. I was curious if there's a possibility of continuing on in that world, but having a different style of gameplay. So like an RPG, because it's like for that example, going from a Metroidvania to an RPG was a pretty big jump. So I was just curious if that is a potential possibility.
So jumping to another genre, you mean?
Yes, sorry, I didn't phrase that very well.
No, you're fine. So after this one, if it is successful, I would like to pursue a Wholesome Monster Boy Academia. Right now, my wife is kind of writing an alpha demo for that sort of thing, and if that is also continuing to be successful, I would like to do Wholesome Monster Girl Academia 2 with a new main character, a new school, new girls, new different religions to explore for the girls interacting with the Catholicism. But as far as other genres go, I think that some sort of Persona Q style thing would be very interesting. So if we made Wholesome Monster Girl Academia, Wholesome Monster Boy Academia, and then a second Wholesome Monster Girl Academia, there's plenty of characters that you'd be able to choose from as that sort of thing. And also, I would say a previous version of me was addicted to gacha games, so I wouldn't be opposed to let's say a moral gacha game where it doesn't kind of take advantage of your wallet. Let's say something more fair.
And that makes sense. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm definitely looking forward to all of those, because even as a male, I'd still be interested in Wholesome Monster Boy Academia. I know that Junie Purewood, and VTuber, has been playing Wholesome Monster Girl Academia, as well as another one who I follow, but I can't remember her name. I think she's a squid girl, but I can't. I'll be honest. As much I like our VTubers, but there's so many of them, it's hard to keep them separated sometimes.
I understand. Yeah. Yes, I've heard a couple of the names out there. I've interacted with a few during their streams. So anytime y'all are streaming, yourself included, and anyone else, just ping one of us on Twitter. Come to the Discord and talk about it. We'll be glad to maybe rate it or something.
I can definitely do that, because I say that definitely sounds interesting. Next time I see one of people I follow, I'll go ahead and definitely let you guys know. And I do appreciate that. So thank you. So, if you were to speedrun a video game, which one would you most want to? As well as, which one do you think you've played the most that you have the easiest time adapting to?
Speedrunning for me, that's difficult, because I don't think I'm the type to speedrun. But if I did, it would have to be one of the shorter ones. Like for instance, I know some people take a little time to play the Mega Man X games, but probably Mega Man X 1 or 2, because I know them more like the back of my hand. Something I do replay often is Half-Life 2 and some of the episodes. I don't think I could speedrun it, though, because I do like taking my time and enjoying just like getting everything just right or whatever. Maybe Dark Souls 1 would be fun, but something along those lines.
That'd be interesting, yeah, because I know, especially as you were saying with Half-Life 2, the atmosphere is a lot of what makes that game. So speedrunning through it and not getting to experience that does happen to be harder. And I do agree. I've currently speedrun one video game, that's Castlevania 1. So it's like, I understand the older games, which are shorter, are a little easier to get through because they don't have as much atmosphere most of the time.
And you don't have to memorize as much if they're shorter.
That's true, which helps a lot. As I say, Castlevania 1 you can do in about half an hour. So it's like, okay, I'm fine with this.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Let's see. A lot of people's initial reactions to Wholesome Monster Girl Academia is that it's a joke title, not actually wholesome, myself included initially, which I apologize for. What would you like to tell people that have this initial reaction?
I totally understand the reaction. I kind of expected it from the outset, considering that the state of the most popular visual novels and monster person media out there are not so wholesome. I would say take it from the people who have actually played the demo to give you a more accurate view. There are still a few naysayers out there, but the ones who do it the most justice took the time to truly understand what I'm trying to do with the visual novel, which is find a way to spread the gospel in modern times using modern mediums like gaming without coming across as cheesy or low quality, also without sacrificing truth. So that's very important.
And I can fully verify that after I played, somebody shared in a Discord, and I played the demo, as Yomic might remember, then I got curious. I actually started asking Yomic questions, and he's very sincere in it. He has a blog that goes over his faith with that as well, which is also very well answered, and it's very appreciative of everything that you do go ahead and take the time to answer. And I'd, for those that you have answered, I'd like to say thank you for that, because it is very assuring, and it is very appreciated.
Absolutely. And as of late, I also have an FAQ in the Discord, which it might be good to start a Twitter or X thread with those same exact Q&A things, just to have a quick reference for anyone who's curious about the most common inquiries and any kind of troubles that people have. Like, for instance, the succubus question, why is there a succubus in a Catholic school? And I think of some others. Well, they're all there. And I've answered a few of them on Twitter too. So
as soon as you said frequently answered questions, I immediately thought of succubus. Like, I know exactly the common one. So, which it is a hard thing to address, but as I said, I think you've done it very well, and you've done it justice very well. So,
thanks.
I won't spoil it for those that do want to go ahead and look into the game or the FAQ. So.
I mean, if you want to, I can even read it directly off of the FAQ. Just if you want the section there. If not, you can cut that. It's fine.
I'm perfectly fine with it, honestly. I just wasn't sure if maybe making a little bit of mystery might entice people. But as I say, yeah, if you'd like to, I'm more than open to it.
Yeah, let me get there.
Of course.
So as part of the FAQ, the question is, how can a succubus race be in your game? Isn't that demonic? And my answer to that is the primary reason is because of the symbolism that can be told through the story. The in-universe explanation is that their race is called succubus based on their physical description. Actual real demons, do not have physical bodies, nor the kind of free will that we humans have, since they, being angels, have, I don't know if this is the correct term, ever-present minds that made their decision once and for all. Therefore, since the succubus race in-game is a free-willed humanoid being, they can receive valid sacramental justification and salvation through ordinary means. That's kind of my rough overview of the matter on that.
And that makes sense. I can understand it still being a little hard for some people, but as you've said, you're addressing it with refinement and making sure to address it seriously, and I think you've handled it very well. So.
Thank you.
Of course.
And for those who have a problem with that, they'll also have to question C.S. Lewis for why he included a satyr in the Chronicles of Narnia, or J.R.R. Tolkien for including elves who were themselves kind of not really a demonic race, but a not very nice race. Let's say.
And as I say, that is a very good point, and it's something that is hard for us to realize sometimes, even with authors that we know are established and do look up to, and it's like, oh, they do have that as well. So that is a very good talking point. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your faith upbringing? If not, that is fully understandable.
I'm absolutely happy to do so. I was born and raised with a Catholic father and a Baptist Methodist mother, kind of back and forth, who agreed to raise me in the Catholic faith. After their divorce and annulment, I also experienced the Protestant side of both Baptist and Methodist churches. Personally, I first found fulfillment through a particular teacher in the Catholic kids education classes. Soon after, through reading the Bible, particularly the wisdom books and the Gospels, and an early iteration of the Catholic Answers site, which was primarily a forum at the time. Right now, it's kind of more articles and stuff, which is very helpful for resources. I personally haven't always been perfectly faithful, having a lot of up and down periods, some questioning of the faith periods of time, but I've definitely grown in sanctification over time. Still not perfect, but all that I thank God for the grace and my wife for building me up.
Absolutely, and that's something I definitely deeply identify with as well, because I know that it's a long walk for all of us, and being able to help each other, especially our spouses, is a tremendous benefit for us to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. I know you've had to artfully. I guess we covered that already, but we'll go over it a little bit anyways. I know you've had to artfully show apologetics and Wholesome Monster Girl Academia since you aren't authentically Catholic. I guess what we haven't covered is how has that been a struggle and how has that helped your faith life?
The first struggle that comes to mind is I'm really not that much of a writer, and the few things I have written were more like persuasive writing, and I do enjoy that. Translating that to a narrative as a not so social person has been a struggle, but
Hmm.
over time, I think I've learned a lot more of how to kind of let that come out. And it also helps me as I've engaged with people about my faith, learning to listen more than speak and to understand that talking to a person is different than talking with a person, especially where it concerns talking about faith matters.
Yeah, and I can understand that that was a lesson I had to learn fairly early on after I reverted myself. So I understand that. I understand that. Your previous games weren't Catholic or Christian focused. What made you decide to do so for this one? Has there been any struggles?
Personally, I've always wanted to do some level of faith-based things in games, but in my opinion, I thought that early on that I was not experienced enough to do it justice. So I felt like I had to build up my experience over the past games, and then I just kind of more recently decided, okay, I think I'm going to try it. I had a little bit of savings up for some of the resources, and this just happens to be the title. Like it just the ideas of combining faith and monster girls, this fantasy world, kind of came to me just at the right moment. So that's kind of how that happened.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely interesting how God can go ahead and influence us with those types of images. I'll be honest, I've kind of somewhat dabbled in my thoughts of making a Dark Souls Noah's Ark type of game because I thought that might be something that might be interesting, honestly. So I
I would
understand.
I would absolutely love it.
Yeah,
Please, we need a Dark Souls Catholic
we do.
game, just any kind of thing like Noah's Ark, just
Yeah.
whatever you want, whatever stories you want to focus. Just make it a whole series.
And I agree, and it has to not be like EA's Dante's Inferno, unfortunately.
Right, right.
But yes, I do agree because it's like, oh, we were so close to perfection, so close.
Indeed, indeed.
Let's see. The vast majority of Christian media is seen as not very good. Why do you think that is? Do you think this will help people change their minds on that?
I think a lot of Christian media is kind of seen as cheap and too in your face, especially in a culture that values quality and letting everyone live the way that they want. Sorry, someone just tried to open the door.
Oh, fully
Um,
understand.
People seem to be willing to try out media that have things that may not agree with them, so long as they don't think it's being pushed in their face, whether it be religion or an ideology, and which you can see from both sides, honestly. Um, Similarly, if a piece of media is honest and upfront about its themes, people are willing to give it a try or give it a pass if it's just not their thing. I guess the key to that is being honest about what you're presenting. There could also be more to it, but this appears to be the surface of, like, I guess, why some Christian media is seen as cheap.
Absolutely, and that makes sense. And even if something does have a good message behind it and is truthful, sometimes the art style can be look like it's a couple years behind. I know my son does happen to like EWTN's My Catholic Family, but it definitely looks like a 2005 Flash animation, and it
Sure.
still
Yeah,
looks like a 2000.
I think that the church who kind of funded all this historical art can.
Mhm.
I'm not saying give us money to do this. I'm saying that um, there can be more effort put into it, even from a private layperson standpoint.
And I agree with that, and I know as of the moment, Luce has been a topic of conversation, and I think that's a good move in the right direction. I would like it if we got some more Catholic artists on that, but at the same time, I do know that even for the Renaissance, not all of them were either faithful Catholics or Catholics, so it is something that's. But yes, I do agree with that. Going ahead and encouraging people with art or pieces of media that is meaningful and, as you were saying earlier, truthful, I think would help a lot. And as long as it's not coming along and saying, "How do you do, fellow kids?" So I
For
agree with
sure,
that.
for sure.
Yeah,
You don't want them cringing along.
no, definitely not. Let's see. For those that do want to try their hands at making a Catholic focused or influence game, what advice would you give?
Just be creative, go deep within your creative recesses, but also don't skimp on the quality. But it's also okay if you start with bad programming art. Like, you don't have to put your best foot forward in the beginning stages. But once you do have the gameplay loop done and a good bit of level design under wraps, or writing if you're doing a visual novel, start looking for someone to help make it more appealing if you're not an artist. If you're not a writer and you are an artist, try to team up with a writer or a programmer. Unless you're going for a specific particular niche, maybe you do want to have like a childlike drawing with finger painting to represent your art. Just be creative about it. I would also recommend making sure that anything you're explicitly teaching is able to be sourced by the church or reputable apologist. Bible quotes are good too. Sometimes people take direct Bible quotes as too in your face. So you can judge whether you want that to be a part of your game or not. It is definitely a part of my game, but like, you can be more subtle about it if you would like. If in doubt, ask your priest or a spiritual director. So they can definitely be a help.
Absolutely, and that all makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see. What inspired you to do Monster Girls specifically, as opposed to regular girls, aliens, or even more normal fantasy girls?
Generally because Monster Girls do provoke your attention immediately. They and many fantasy races, including aliens, evoke many questions about the world that they inhabit and their relations to faith matters. After all, what's more interesting question to a non-believer? Why isn't person A interested in being baptized? Or can a half vampire enter a church, much less touch holy water to begin with? Like, these are the things that you can kind of evoke a little bit more of your imagination, along with just the kind of more ordinary parts of the church.
Yeah, which I do appreciate, because while on the vampire thing, it is interesting to see the distinction between fully fledged on vampires as well as the daywalkers in Wholesome Monster Girl Academia, and making it so that there is an understanding with that. I think that's somewhat similar to Cirque du Freak, if I remember correctly, but not quite, obviously one for one. So I'm just thinking about that, because
I haven't personally read or watched that, but yeah, my lore does separate the two.
Absolutely,
Vampires in my world are assumed to have some sort of evil demonic ritual associated with it, along with maybe some sort of concoction that they consume. Whereas daywalkers are free-willed individual beings who are at no fault at all for having to live in the state that they're in. So I do make the clear distinction that one is evil and the other is merely human, as human as a monster girl can be.
Of course, right? Absolutely, I do appreciate that, because it is definitely nice to see that distinction, and yeah, that is very, very well thought out. What was the choice of genre, visual novel / dating sim, your first choice when you decided to make this game?
For this particular game, yes, but something like a dungeon crawler, like I mentioned earlier, could have also been interesting.
Right.
From a gameplay standpoint. It probably would have been more difficult to have routes, like going down routes to get to know the girls better, kind of deeper storylines, unless you did like a classic RPG, in which case it would, again, like, you would be focusing more on the fantasy, like fighting element and stuff. With the visual novel, you have the benefit of being able to tell that deeper and complex story per character, and people are more likely to explore those different routes without having to go through the same gameplay like 5 whatever amount of times. If I were to make a gameplay focused Monster Girl setting, like I said, dungeon crawler would be good, gotcha game would be good, Persona style, not just Persona Q, but just Persona itself with the social links would be kind of fun.
That could be interesting, because as I say, now that you're saying that, the only one that I can think of for a dungeon crawler that also has a little bit of dating mechanics behind it, I think, was called Conception, and I don't think I would probably recommend that to most.
Right.
Yeah, there's some things behind it. I definitely have I have the second one, and I'm not going to deny that. So I have played through it. So, yeah.
I've looked into it. I mean, it seems like an interesting concept.
Yeah,
but
that is true.
It does have some problems as far as the the story goes. I guess you would say.
Yeah, but if you did go ahead and cover that, that would definitely be something I'd be interested in, because it was something that was interesting from that aspect of it. So it's like, yeah, that I was just, while you were thinking that, I know you mentioned it earlier, but then once we got here, it's like, oh yeah, that is something that is kind of similar in a sense. So yeah.
Absolutely.
For one of your previous projects, which was based off of, or influenced by Digimon, I should say, you had NFTs as something that happened to be a critical part of that. And I know that that can be a little bit of a contentious topic sometimes, but I know that you previously discussed it, that that doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And I was curious how you were going to use that, and if you have any plans for that in the future.
Sure. I know NFTs and cryptocurrency stuff can be contentious for many people, especially with how many scams are out there. But I'm perfectly willing to be completely open and honest about what I've been involved in. And in this particular case, it started a long time ago as actually my first Java project. Before, when it hits the fan, it wasn't crypto related. It was just kind of a Digimon pet simulator clone. And I had all the art assets ready. And it just kind of, I dropped it after I started making other things. And when it hit the fan, kind of became more of my main project. So that kind of went into obscurity for a little while. And then let's see, right before COVID hit, right before I was sent home from IT, so we could all kind of distance from each other, the NFT scene was booming, and I've been really big into research about cryptocurrencies and their use and utility, and NFTs really intrigued me. And one of the things I saw was all these profile picture projects. Some people were tossing around the idea of a game, and I was like, don't I have a game that would fit perfectly with this? So over about 3 or 4 months, I learned the blockchain language Solidity for the Ethereum network and created the NFT project for these spirit orb pets. And the thing that differentiated mine from all these other ones that some people do have problems with is mine wasn't just a profile picture community sort of thing. And a lot of these profile picture things, in their defense, they're mostly communities surrounding these. But as far as mine went, mine also came with the game. So when you owned one of these NFTs digitally, it's not like you could just download the picture and play the game. You had to own one of these NFTs to own one of the characters to interact with the game with. So you would play with it, you would pet it, you would feed it, and that's kind of how that formulated. The thing that happened with that project is I created it, I programmed it over 3 to 4 months, and right when I released it, I met with some initial success, but then I had to program the second part of it, and right when I released the second part of it, that's about when the NFT market started crashing. And so they did not completely mint out. Minting is when you get the community to buy the initial supply. So it did not completely mint out. And the community kind of sort of drifted away from the NFT scene. And then over time, just people were less and less interested in it. And we just kind of all agreed as a community to just drop the project. But the upside of that for me was I did have a lot of fun creating it. I had a lot of fun with the community surrounding it. And the end result was I did have a decent sum of money that I could start developing other games with. So that's kind of the main income source where I got to fund the Wholesome Monster Girl Academia game, get all the art and music ready. And that kind of was my transitory process from Alpha Man to Wholesome Monster Girl Academia.
Awesome. That makes sense. And do you have any possibility of returning to that in the future, I guess, or does that market just seem to have gone all the way crashed, out of curiosity?
Cryptocurrencies kind of have their up and down periods.
Okay.
Right now, because Bitcoin is now at an all-time high, the various communities and cryptocurrencies are going wild. But since I've got all of my brain matter focused on Wholesome Monster Girl Academia, it's something people actually want, and I think it's more worthy of a project than any NFT project could be in maybe the indefinite future. I never plan to implement NFTs into the Wholesome Monster Girl
Right.
universe or any of the IP. So I know some people are worried about crypto bros inserting NFTs in the
Mm.
games. That's not happening. I'll make that promise completely right now. NFTs and cryptocurrencies are not a part of Wholesome Monster Girl Academia.
That makes sense. It definitely seems like you'd be very upfront about it, and since that hasn't been a part of it since the beginning, that makes sense. And even with the other one, I discovered you after that, but it didn't even seem like that was predatory. It just seemed like something that you could do, which I do think does also happen to be a big distinction that people are sometimes not willing to identify or let go of, and that can be something that is difficult to deal around.
Certainly, yeah. As far as NFTs go, it's kind of a half and half, a community thing and an investment thing, and that does come with some sort of risk. But I was definitely very open up front. Um, you are not guaranteed any profit for this. None of this is what's the way to phrase that? None of this is intended to be an investment. There's no guarantee you'll make money from this. This is a game that uses cryptographic assets. It uses cryptographic technology in order to work. But even despite that, people did find an interest and did invest money in it. And so I was paid, and that's kind of just that.
Which, yeah, makes sense. Going back to how you were saying earlier that if you're truthful with it, that people would go ahead and be interested in. That makes sense. Kind of like a inverse gotcha in a sense, where gotcha does go ahead and try to get more money with you and try to go ahead and not tell you the full truth most of the time. I've been there myself. I may have spent a couple $100s in the Looney Tunes one. I'll be honest. But
Yep,
whereas with
personally, I had a little bit of a. I started at the very beginning of the Fate Go gotcha in the North American version, and I did spend maybe $100 or $200 over maybe 2.5 years before I quit. Which I think, as far as gotcha spending goes, isn't absurd. People certainly do go a lot worse off than that. So I think mine was a little tempered at that point. And like I mentioned before, if I ever did turn Wholesome Monster Girl Academia into sort of a gotcha thing, I would not be focusing on microtransactions. That would not be a major part of it. In fact, I would seek to do the more ethical sort of thing. I think Girls Frontline is kind of lauded as another gotcha game that is less predatory. Like whereas Fate Go has a 1% chance to get a super rare, the Girls Frontline game had a 3% chance, which it doesn't seem like a lot, but considering how much of the premium currency you get just normally playing those games, that one was a lot more fair. So not shilling the games and anything. Those were just games that I had played, and just
No, that makes sense, because it's like, I know that technically people wouldn't call Team Fortress 2 a gotcha game, but after they introduced hats, it definitely became a gotcha game, gonna be honest.
Sure. Honestly, the hats thing and the what was it, the Steam item inventory thing, that's closer to NFTs than it is gotcha, in my personal opinion.
That is fair, because it's like, you do just get that makes sense. I hadn't even thought about that, but that all makes sense, and I do appreciate that, because I know a lot of people do have some either misunderstandings about NFTs, cryptocurrency, all that stuff. But I was going to say, it definitely sounds like, as you said, there does happen to be a way to go ahead and use it responsibly and reasonably, which makes sense from a Catholic perspective as well, because I know that obviously even with gambling, we are allowed to do that as long as we don't endanger our family or ourselves with how much we spend. So that definitely makes sense.
Right.
Oh, all right. Of course. Let's see. Were there any bands you enjoy listening to that influenced Aria's style? What other real-world influences shaped any of the other girls?
So there's been a bunch of different rock bands that I've kind of grown up listening to. I didn't really personally have a genre that I liked, except for like actual church music, until middle school. And then it was alternative rock, which kind of fits just down Aria's aisle. Eventually, I kind of found more favorites in high school, like System of a Down, Machina Supremacy, even though they do unfortunately have some anti-religious songs. Symphony X, Camelot, a bunch of others as well. I wouldn't say there was a lot of songs that inspired any of the other girls as much as it did for Aria, but I do sneak in some of their preferences every now and then, usually in Aria's route.
Which makes sense. Yeah, I was gonna say, since Aria is the most music based, it would make sense she would know the other girls' music interests as well. So that makes sense. For Aria, a part of her story you've hinted at will be dealing with her bad influences, such as Wicca and the occult. How did you go about doing research for that? And did you feel it was precarious while doing so, or were you able to find good sources without possible endangerment?
Well, aside from playing wizards in multiple fantasy games and wanting magic to be real as a kid, as an adult, I really haven't found any temptations to go down an actual real life example of magic. So studying the influences are kind of um, the studying the influences that are relevant in Aria's route really haven't been a source of temptation for me personally. Most of my sources have been interviews or discussion from people who either currently believe in a Gnostic slash pagan style hybrid of the world, or people who have since left the occult behind for greener pastures. I really don't plan to explore much more than surface level ideas for those sorts of things, so people won't be tempted to
Hmm.
go too deep into that. I really try to only go as deep as I need to explain it, and that confirmed that the descriptions from people I've interviewed are kind of more accurate, and then um, not necessarily go into detail to debunk them, but kind of show the danger in them and the danger in that thought pattern.
And that makes sense because that basically goes along with be aware but be cautious. So that makes sense. So that's definitely something good to cover. I know you've expressed. Well, we've already talked about that as well, actually. Oh, that's. But we didn't get to that question. I think that one's very important. So if a wholesome monster boy academia, as we talked about earlier, does come to fruition, will best boy Damien be one of the boys the female lead could date?
I know it would probably be a request. I knew at least one of the female streamers who played Wholesome Monster Girl
Hmm.
Academias was a fan of Damien,
Hmm.
but there is little likelihood of seeing the same characters from the first in the second, or in Wholesome Monster Boy Academia. There could be some references,
Right.
but it's unlikely you will see them. It's very unlikely that we'll see anyone dating Damien. Sorry.
Sure. That's understand. I mean, listen, nobody said Damien doesn't have a cousin, so that's still a possibility in the air.
That's fair.
How do you go about balancing game development with work and family life?
I am fortunate enough to have an IT related job that bounces between having a decent amount of downtime when it's not busy and getting stuff done immediately for whatever emergency goes down. And I'm sure any IT person can relate to
Mm.
that. Otherwise, it would be back to staying up late into the night and sacrificing sleep, which I do not recommend for many, many reasons. Some of my other games, I stay up till 1 or 2 a.m., sometimes 3, and then I would get up for the next day, and it didn't work out.
Mm. I
It
can
got
understand.
stuff done, but it was not healthy, especially for mental health. So definitely don't recommend it.
I can understand that. It's a lot easier when you're younger to do that, but as you get older, I have definitely noticed my body going, no, I don't like this. Not even for my job, where I have, because I'm in a similar situation. I work on servers all day, and I have to be up for work at 5:10. It's like, no, please, this is too early. So I
Oh, yeah.
understand. Yep, I understand entirely. For Ren, exercise is a big part of her character. Which exercises do you like the most in your free time? Were you inspired for Ren from doing martial arts yourself, or was there another inspiration?
Well, as far as my current life, I'm not very consistent with exercise, but when I can get into a rhythm, I do like lifting more than cardio. My experience with martial arts is about the same as Gabe, the main character, had growing up, which was about a year of taekwondo in middle school. Otherwise, I do respect the martial arts a lot
Hmm.
and would recommend it to people looking for a way to switch up between exercise, whether you dislike cardio or lifting. It's a good middle ground. It can get you focused, give you discipline, self control, and teach you self defense along the way.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. It's been probably 20 years, but I did 2 years of Taekwondo as well, and I definitely there's something wouldn't mind getting back to, especially with my son. And admittedly, I am on the other side of whereas I do love cardio. I
Fair enough, fair enough. And
it's,
we tried to get our son into jujitsu, and
oh really? Okay.
that worked out for a little bit, and then homework got busy, and now he's asking about it again. So maybe
Hmm.
we'll see that happen again.
I can understand that. Not quite the same for us at the moment. He's been asking about scouts for us, and they haven't started again for the year, so I understand.
Yep, fair enough, fair enough.
How have you balanced the romance typically associated with this genre with Catholicism? Can we get an idea on how far the intimacy will go?
Yeah, that's a totally fair question considering the nature of these types of games in this genre. Without spoiling too much, I want it to be appropriate enough for at least teens to be able to read it. Things like kissing and hugging aren't off the table. Um, and in one route, it might even deal with the question of how far is too far without ever getting explicit or sexual.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I was gonna say, I know that is definitely something that does need talked about, but it's not something. But yeah, it can be definitely a very difficult route to go ahead and go down. And I can imagine with Eva, it would probably, due to the misunderstandings about her, probably would be the one that is the most prominent. If I had to take a guess,
I won't spoil anything.
no, I was gonna say no spoils, no spoils.
She does struggle with things relating to romance, but it is mostly surrounded with the stereotypes related to her, and I'll leave that at that.
That's perfect, because I want to leave a little bit of mystery for people. Speaking of Eva, how many of her book recommendations have you personally read? Are there any that are your favorites, and are there any you wish you could have given her now in the future but decided against it?
Let's see. I've read all of the mentioned C.S. Lewis books. Most of the G.K. Chesterton books. I know I've read Heretics, Orthodoxy, The Everlasting Man, and a few other of his more philosophical books. I haven't gotten into the Father Brown stuff. I don't think Eva recommended that. I have read all of the sci-fi and dystopia recommendations.
Okay.
Let's see, pretty much. Let's see, about half of the philosophy recommendations. Some of the other ones, like The Republic, I haven't personally read. I just know that it was prominent and building up to what is currently like U.S. history, like John Locke sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the rest of them is probably just my to read list. And a lot of them I know that they'll kind of be up my alley, but I don't always feel like I have time to read them. I personally recently, this isn't something Eva recommended, but maybe I should put it somewhere. I don't know, maybe not. I'm going through and generating ideas, but right now I just finished the Visions of Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. That was a very interesting read. It's very extra biblical. It's private revelation, so a lot of it is it's approved as private reading for the church, but not approved as doctrine or dogma. It kind of explores the biblical narrative from an alternate viewpoint, adding details here and there to make certain things make sense if they were read in a certain light. But again, everything with a grain of salt for visions and private revelation.
Right, and that makes sense, because I think I've read St. Faustina's diary as well, and that would be a very similar situation. And what you're talking about, and that does sound interesting, though. And I'd have to. I think I've heard about that saint before. As much as I love all the saints we have, with the many thousands that we have, it is kind of hard to not get confused, or get them mixed up, I should say, not confused, and get them a little scrambled sometimes.
Well, for her, I think it's probably because she's only a blessed right now. She's not quite a saint.
That makes sense.
And I think one of the major influences is Passion of the Christ. I think Mel Gibson used some of the extra biblical scenes in the movie.
I could see that.
I don't remember exactly which scenes they were, but that's probably one of the first places I would have thought to have encountered that. And I have also read some of St. Faustina's diary, too. I also highly recommend that.
Yes, it's a very good read. I agree with that entirely. There's more Saints diaries that I wish was available, and I keep hearing St. Maximilian Kolbe's diary is available, and I haven't found it yet. And it's like, I'd love to find that, please.
Absolutely.
So I understand entirely. What engine are you using, and does your wife help you proofread?
I use RenPy, and yes, I use currently. First, I stick it through Grammarly, and just kind of copy paste that there, and let the grammar fixer give me some recommendations for for misspellings and grammar issues. Maybe I forget a word here and there. And then after that, I'll have my wife read through it, which she is excited to read. I'm not making her do this or anything. She does read through it, and she gives me suggestions on how to make things better, especially from a romance and character dialogue sort of thing. Because I wouldn't say I'm weak at it, but she has the woman's touch. She has the feminine touch where, why isn't this explained? how is she smiling? Why is she blushing? And what does it look like? And what are the things that influence this? What's going on in Gabriel's mind? Just all the little tiny things like that that I don't always think of directly. And then every once in a while, she'll make fun of me. I'll hear a snicker beside me because I'll say the same word 3 times in a sentence or make a silly typo, and that's always nice to amuse her in one way, and and then she helps me get the editing done. So
I understand. It's always interesting to see how you can go ahead and make mistakes with writing or with trivia that you think is well known. I hate to call out my wife on this, but she did for a while think that Mario was on Sony consoles. It's like, nope, that's definitely not how that goes, honey. So it's not trying to blast her on that, but it is definitely, it's cute. It's fun to have these cute little stories for later, not something that we want to go ahead and be harassing them about. But that does sound like a very good, that sounds like that works very well, and that's honestly very endearing as well.
Absolutely. It's very fun. It's very surprising that I finally have my wife kind of co-writing or co-making a game with me. It's not something I expected starting out in game development, despite the fact that she was pretty much the person to kind of push me in the direction of, all right, you go to this meeting right here. These people are doing game development. You should talk about your game while they talk about their game. And that just started the whole story.
That's very cool. Do you have any spiritual or theological consultants for this game?
So far, I have presented the game to a local deacon and priest, and I have a second priest who is going to take a look at some of the summaries, but all of them are very busy right now and don't have a lot of time set aside for it. So I think instead of emailing, which was kind of the first recommendation, I'll follow up with more meetings and then just either have them read it or I can read it in front of them. We'll have discussions about whether I'm being accurate with the theology and apologetics, especially when it concerns the priest character and Damien, who are the kind of the most knowledgeable ones about the faith. Eva as well.
That makes sense. That's definitely very good to have all those sources. So, yeah. Are there any of the characters in the game based on real life people?
I would say bits and pieces are like different people. So no character is 100% like any people that they are more directly inspired by. Whether they have traits from interacting with men and women throughout my life that I've talked to or been friends with, or for girls had a relationship with, or my wife herself, or myself, just plucking little bits and pieces of me and putting them into different characters. I think it's just kind of a big mixed bag of little elements of different interactions in my life to build up other new characters, along with their own unique personal traits and things that they struggle with, and things that they need and want in life as well.
That makes sense. Definitely something that art imitates life, so that makes a lot of sense. It has been a joy and a pleasure to have you, Yomic. And I thank you for your time. For people to stay up to date on the game development, where would you recommend they look?
I would say the best place to get alerts and help the game out at the same time is to wishlist it in Steam, where I do update the blog anytime there's a large update or announcement. I do the same for the itch.io version on a smaller basis, so you can follow it there as well. For more casual news and for kind of like more day-to-day or week-to-week updates, you can check out the Twitter/X at Wholesome MGA, or my personal Twitter handle, True Yomic. And finally, the Discord is really where I update more immediately, and most of the community hangs out at the Discord. So they get more specific updates and a little bit more commentary. You can usually just ping me for specific questions. That's really the place I'm most available as well.
Yep, and Yomic does a great job, as well as all the moderators there. And as I said, I've been there. I enjoy being there. He does a great job, and he is very forthright and helps everybody with any questions. So yeah, it is honestly a wonderful community.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Is there any last things you'd like to tell everyone?
Last thing I would say is I want to see more Catholics and non-Catholic Christians, Protestants, making high quality games out there. I see a lot out there with some potential, but I want to see the bar raised to a level that rivals all the top tier secular indie games. Not necessarily the AAA games, that'll come with time,
Mm-hmm.
but indie games specifically. I know that if let's go all the way back to Cave Story. If Pixel can do it by himself, I think there are a few people out there that can do it. And for the people who can't do it by themselves, like me, you can either hire some people or find just a tight knit group of Catholic artists and get something together. I believe in every last one of you. I think you can do it.
Absolutely, and yeah, that's a great idea. Honestly, a little bit more networking with that might help go ahead and bring everybody together with that as well, which can be a hard thing to do sometimes as well. But
Absolutely. Maybe we need to start up a Discord for Catholic creators, game developers, artists, musicians,
yeah,
writers. Just get something together and just form a community.
yeah, and even people just offering support and reading, willing to proofread may not be a bad idea. I agree with that. That makes sense. All right. In that case, then, thank you very much, Yomic. I appreciate you being here. God bless everybody, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
God bless.